Hola clase, hoy vamos a hablar de la diferencia entre ser y estar, the difference between ser and estar. These verbs are tricky because both verbs mean to be. So ser means to be and estar means to be, but we use them differently, okay? And we're going to talk about when we use each one. Okay, so for present tense ser, we should be very familiar with these conjugations. Yo soy, I am. Tú eres, you are. Él or ella es, he or she is. Nosotros somos, we are. And ustedes, ellos son. So y'all are or they are. Okay? Again, don't forget usted goes here, which means you formal. So you are would be usted es. Okay, so those are the conjugations for ser in present tense. The conjugations for estar in present tense should also be very familiar. Yo estoy, I am. Tú estás, you are. And again, the accent mark matters here because estás is different than the word estas. Estas means these when we're talking about feminine things. But estás with the tilde, pronounced a little bit differently and with a completely different meaning. Okay, so pay attention to that accent mark. Okay, let's get rid of estas. Okay, so estoy, yo estoy, I am. Tú estás, you are. Él or ella está, he or she is. And again, the accent mark matters because esta without the accent mark means this when you're talking about something feminine. Okay, so estoy, estás, está. Nosotros estamos, we are. Ellos están, they are. Or ustedes, y'all. It's both ustedes and ellos. Y'all are or they are. Okay, so now we know the present tense conjugations, but when do we use them? When do we use ser? And when do we use estar? Okay, well, let's think about just some conversation things that we know how to do. For example, if I'm asking you how you are, I'm going to say ¿Cómo estás? Right? So that means that we use estar to talk about feelings, okay? And then also when I ask you where you're from, I say ¿De dónde eres? So we know that ser is used to talk about origin, where somebody's from. Okay, I have a little acronym that helps us remember when to use ser and when to use estar. Okay, so we already talked about with estar, we use it for emotions. Okay, and we also talked about how with ser, we use it for origin, where you're from. I get my Spanish and my English spellings confused. Excuse me if that's spelled wrong. Okay. So we also use ser when we say ¿Cómo eres? How are you? And in that case, we're not asking about your emotions. We're asking for a description of your personality or what you look like. Okay, so D is for description. Okay, O is for origin. A word that's very similar to description that we're going to use for C is characteristics. Okay, so soy, I am. Soy una persona responsable. Soy inteligente. Those are permanent characteristics, things that don't change very easily. Okay. We also use ser for time, telling the time and telling the date. So, hoy es el 7 de enero. Today is the 7th of January. Ahora son las 8. So that's the time. Right now it is 8 o'clock. Okay, we have another O, and that is for occupation. Soy profesora. Soy médico. Okay, we use, even though we could change our profession, we typically think of an occupation or a profession as something more permanent and something that describes who we are, the essence of who we are. Okay, so when we're thinking of ser, we're thinking of essence. It is what it is. Okay, versus when we're talking about estar, we're thinking of condition. It is what it is right now. Okay, our last letter in our acronym for ser, so D for description, O for origin, C for characteristics, T for time and date, O for occupation, and R for relationship. Es mi hermana, es mi amigo, or somos amigos, we are. Okay, so that's when we use ser in these situations that are more permanent. Not completely permanent, but more permanent, okay? Estar is when things are a little bit more temporary. So our emotions change throughout the day, which is why we use estar, okay? And then like I alluded to up here, we also use estar for condition. Okay, so if we're talking about the door is open, that's its current condition. Okay, it's not always open. It can close very easily, but in this moment it is open. La puerta está abierta. Also, if your arm is broken, that is its current condition. It's not going to stay like that forever. So mi brazo está roto. Okay, it's its current condition. P is for position. So we use estar when we're talking about where things are. ¿Dónde estás? Where are you? Okay. And you would say, estoy en la clase de español, or estoy en mi casa. Okay. To talk about your location. Okay. And I know that position and location are very similar, but there is a slight difference. So position could be estoy parada, I am standing, or estoy sentada, I'm seated. That's more position versus location. Estoy en la casa, estoy en la escuela, estoy en la clase de español. Those are all locations. Okay, A is for action in progress. And I'm going to talk about this more. Oops, that didn't quite fit, did it? Okay, so it should be action in progress. And like I said, I'm going to talk about this more on the next page. Okay, so we use ser for things that are what they are, that are more permanent. We use estar for things that can change more easily. Okay, and don't forget, doctor helps us remember our uses for ser, and place helps us remember our uses for estar. Okay, as promised, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what I meant when I said action in progress, which means it's something that is happening right now. So this is our gerund form or our present progressive form. Okay, so the present progressive form. And we use this to say ing. Now, we use ing in English a whole lot more than we use it in Spanish. In Spanish, to say I'm running, typically you would say corro, yo corro, I run, okay? But sometimes when we are in the very moment, we are doing it in this moment, or in the middle of doing it, we use the present progressive form. And so we use a version of estar plus the verb with the progressive ending. So running would be corriendo, okay? And it's yendo because correr is an ER verb, okay? So ER verbs take yendo, Okay, so do IR verbs. Escribiendo comes from escribir. So I am writing would be estoy. We have to put the I am part. Estoy escribiendo. Okay. Talking, hablar, changes to hablando. So I am talking would be estoy hablando. And again, that's ando because it's an AR verb originally. Okay. And similarly, escuchar, AR verb, becomes escuchando. Te estoy escuchando. I'm listening to you. Okay. Te estoy escuchando. And estoy, because we want to say I am, so we put estar in yo form. So these must be used with estar. Estar is your helping verb with these action in progress verbs, these present progressive. Let's write that word here because that's the term for this form. Present progressive form. Okay. So we also know that we're probably going to use estar if we see a word that ends in ado or ido. And these are the endings for participles. What's a participle? Anybody remember from English class? Well, a participle is a verb turned into an adjective. So this typically happens when we're talking about the condition of something, okay? More on the next page. Okay, so pintar means to paint, right? If we want to say that I already painted it and now it is painted, for example, the wall, la pared está, it is, because that's its condition now, pintada. Okay, and in this case it ends in an A, pintada, because la pared. We talked about this earlier this year, but I just wanted to go over it really quickly. Okay, let's say marcar is to mark. Okay, and then we want to say the page is marked. La página está, and then página is feminine and singular, so it's going to be marcada. It won't write. Okay, marcada. Okay, so then we say closed, for example. The windows, las ventanas están. Why están? Well, because it's plural, right? So they are, están cerradas. And it ends in as because ventanas, we're talking about las ventanas. Cumplir is to be completed, or to complete, rather. So when we say that the year has been completed, we would say el año ya está cumplido. And remember, this is an IR, so it changes to IDO. If it were something feminine, it would be ida instead of ido. Because remember, we've turned this verb into an adjective. That's what a participle means. And we know that we're using estar almost always when we see a word that ends in ado, ada, ados, adas, or ido, ida, idos, idas. Okay, these are our irregular participles. Okay, and again, you have these in your notes, but I just wanted to review them with you because we forget these things, okay? And remember, participles we use with estar. R is for romper, to break. Which in its participle form becomes roto. It is broken. Está roto. And if we're talking about something feminine, such as the computer, la computadora está rota. Changes to feminine. Okay. E is for escribir. And in its participle form, it is escrito. Written. So la información está escrita because information is feminine, la información. So we change the O to an A. Okay? Vi is for ver, to see. And if we want to say it is seen, we say visto. The word for view is vista because a view is something that is seen. Okay? The other V is for, oops, wrong color. Volver, which means to return. Yep, and then the vuelto, which means returned. And we actually use this more commonly with a prefix, such as to return, revolver is not to return. It is to like mix, like eggs that are scrambled would be huevos revueltos. Los huevos están revueltos. M is for morir, to die, and to say dead, está muerto or muerta. Okay. A is for abrir, to open, and abierto, opened. So la tienda, the store, la tienda está abierta. The store is open. Okay. This other R is for resolver, to resolve. And it becomes resuelto. Resolved. So el problema está resuelto. The problem is resolved. And I know problema ends in MA, but it is actually masculine, el problema. And so we use O at the end. Okay? And then C is for cubrir, to cover. And it becomes cubierto. Covered. Okay, so P, down here below, our last three, Reverend, R-E-V-V, Mark, M-A-R-C, and Ph.D. has a Ph.D. P is for poner, to put. Puesto means put. For example, the plates are put on the table. Los platos ya están puestos en la mesa. Okay? H is for hacer, which becomes hecho. Hacer is to do, and hecho means done. So the work is done. El trabajo ya está hecho. It is done. Okay, and then decir, last one, is to say, and dicho, said. Okay, so the truth has been said. La verdad está dicho. The truth, or it would be dicha, because la verdad, feminine. Okay? Oops. Okay, so don't forget that ser and estar exist in present tense, but they also exist in imperfect and in preterite. Okay, so take a moment to review what is the imperfect of ser and what is the preterite of ser. And I'll give you a hint. The yo form is era, used to be. I used to be, yo era una niña buena. Okay. Estar, the yo form is estaba. So I was in the store, for example. Yo estaba en la tienda when something happened. Remember, we use imperfect to set the scene, so that's why we would use estaba there. And then preterite for ser, yo form is fui. Preterite for estar, yo form is estuve. Okay? Take a moment to look back through your notes and fill out the rest of the forms. Tu form, el, ella, nosotros, and ellos forms. Okay, so that concludes the presentation on ser versus estar. Remember that they both mean to be. but they are used in different situations. And that ser is typically more permanent, and estar is typically more temporary. But you have to remember doctor and place to remember the specific rules for when we use ser and when we use estar. Don't forget, make sure you take notes over all of this information, as there will be an in-class quiz next class, and you will be able to use your notes for that quiz.